They say weddings bring families together, but for me, Brandon's wedding was the day I finally understood how far apart we had always been. My name is Clarissa Monroe. I'm 38 years old, the founder and CEO of Elevate Systems, a tech company I built from the ground up. After years of building my business with little support from my family, I still clung to the hope that my younger brother's big day might bridge something between us. I should have known better. Growing up in Fairmont, Illinois, Brandon and I had the kind of childhood that photographs lie about. The kind that looked warm on the outside but had invisible cracks behind every smile. We were close once. Only 2 years apart, we built blanket forts in the basement and raced bikes down Sycamore Hill until our legs gave out. But as we grew, so did the gap between us. When Brandon joined the basketball team and started dating cheerleaders, I buried myself in science competitions and code. Our parents, Helen and Gregory Monroe, praised his athletic trophies like golden idols on the mantle. My debate medals and scholarship letters gathered dust in a drawer. Clarissa's just really into her hobbies, my mom would explain when someone asked about me. I didn't grow out of my hobby. I graduated valedictorian, earned a scholarship to Caltech, and after grinding through years at underfunded startups, I risked everything to create Elevate. The first year was brutal. I lived on instant oatmeal and slept under my desk. Meanwhile, Brandon stepped right into Monroe Builders, the family's construction company, and was handed a regional director title within a month. It's about hands-on leadership, not just book smarts, my dad told me when I asked about it over a Thanksgiving dinner I almost skipped. I never asked for handouts, just acknowledgement. And still, when Elevate secured a multi-million-dollar contract with Argo Logistics, a national retail supply chain, all I got was a short text from my mother. "Congrats on the software deal. We're proud." No call, no questions. Then came the news. Brandon was marrying Lacey Whitmore, the daughter of Douglas Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Properties, a real estate conglomerate with towers in every major city. My parents were ecstatic. "This is huge for the company," Dad said. "Doug's got connections. Brandon's going places." Not a word about my own company expanding to Europe the same month. Not a single word. Still, when Whitmore Properties reached out to Elevate, I treated it like any other lead. Their VP of Operations, unaware of the family connection, attended my seminar at a Chicago tech conference and was impressed. After a few months of proposals and audits, they signed a $30 million contract with Elevate Systems. It was the biggest deal in our history. I told my parents during a routine Sunday call. "That's nice, dear," Mom said. "Did you get your invite to the engagement party? It's at the Whitmore estate. They've got their own lake." At the engagement party, I finally met Douglas Whitmore. "So you're the Clarissa Monroe," he said with a wide grin and firm handshake. "Your platform is revolutionary. Our logistics team hasn't stopped talking about it." "Thank you," I replied. "We're thrilled to be working with your company." My mom hovered nearby. "Oh, you two have met," she chirped. "Clarissa's always been our little computer genius." Douglas blinked. "Wait, you're Brandon's sister? He never mentioned you ran Elevate Systems." I smiled tightly. "I'm not surprised." Douglas looked briefly uncomfortable before recovering. "Well, it's a small world, isn't it?" A small world indeed. A world in which I built something powerful, yet still somehow remained invisible. But I held on to hope that the wedding would be different. I imagined walking in with Julian Park, my partner of 3 months, who also happened to be a well-known VC, someone who saw me not as someone's sister, but as a force in her own right. "Are you sure you want me there?" Julian asked over dinner the week before. "It sounds tense." "Exactly why I need you there," I replied. "I want someone next to me who actually sees me." The night before the wedding, I called Brandon. "Hey," I said, "just wanted to say I'm happy for you, looking forward to tomorrow." "Thanks, sis," he replied, distracted. "It's chaos here. Lacey's changing the seating chart again. Don't worry, it's handled." I should have worried. The Whitmore estate was more palace than home, all white marble and fountains and valet parking. As Julian and I stepped out of my black Tesla, he glanced around and said, "You didn't mention it was going to be Versailles." "First time here myself," I replied. My mom, dressed in blush pink and pearls, spotted me. "Clarissa, you made it! And who's this handsome gentleman?" "Julian Park, Mom." "Julian, my mother, Helen." Julian extended his hand with his usual grace. "Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Monroe. Beautiful estate." She nodded, clearly impressed, then pivoted to usher us toward the main lawn. "Your father's at the bar with Doug and some of the investors. Come say hi." Dad greeted us with his usual one-arm hug, then turned to Julian. "So, you work in finance?" "Venture capital," Julian replied. "Primarily early-stage tech." "Oh," Dad said, losing interest. "Clarissa's into that too, computers and such." Julian glanced at me. I smiled politely and sipped champagne. Then Douglas appeared and greeted me warmly. "The brains behind our system. I've been bragging about you all morning." The surrounding investors looked at me with new interest. "You're with Elevate?" one asked. "We're seeing huge efficiencies in the pilot rollout." I nodded. "We designed the system specifically for scalability and visibility across multiple platforms." My dad chuckled. "Clarissa's always been a whiz. Brandon introduced her to Douglas, didn't you know?" That was a lie. Julian looked at me, sensing the shift in the air. Before I could correct it, Lacey arrived, glowing in a designer gown. "Clarissa, so glad you could make it. And Navy? How efficient. I mentioned pastels for the family photos, didn't I?" "You didn't," I said calmly. "But congratulations. Everything looks perfect." She smiled, then turned to Julian. "And who might this be?" Julian introduced himself. Her expression brightened. "You must join us at the family table for the reception." "We'll be sitting together," Julian said. "Of course," Lacey replied, smiled tight. "I should check with the planner. So many changes last minute." Her tone was syrupy, her eyes sharp. When the ceremony concluded, we headed toward the reception tent. I searched for the seating chart. A flustered wedding planner squinted at her iPad. Monroe. Ah, Clarissa Monroe and guest. Yes, you're at table O." She paused. "Actually, would you mind stepping aside a moment?" She disappeared, then returned with a woman who introduced herself as the catering manager. "Miss Monroe, due to some last-minute changes, your table has been relocated." She led us through the kitchen. In a corner behind the industrial ovens, a small table with a wrinkled cloth had been hastily set. "You're joking," I said. "I apologize. The bride made adjustments for key business guests." "I am a business guest," I said. "My company just signed a $30 million contract with Whitmore Properties." "I wasn't informed," she mumbled. Then Lacey appeared, champagne in hand. "Is there a problem?" "You've seated me in the kitchen," I said. "I'm your husband's sister." "And I had to prioritize," she said sweetly. Daddy's clients take precedence. I'm sure you understand." "Actually, I don't," I said. "I think Brandon would be horrified to know." "Brandon approved the chart," she interrupted. "This morning." Julian's hand tightened around mine. "This is unacceptable," he said. "We'll sit where we belong." Lacey smirked. "Well, Clarissa's from humble roots. Maybe the kitchen feels more familiar." My chest burned, but I wouldn't break. I turned to Julian. "I need a minute." He kissed my cheek. "Take your time. I'll wait outside." I slipped into the restroom and locked the stall. And then, for the first time in a long time, I cried. Not for the insult, but for the years of dismissals that led here. A $30 million contract, and still not worthy of a chair at the table. But that moment became clarity. I didn't need them to see my value. I needed to act like I already saw it myself. The cold porcelain wall pressed against my back as I sat curled in the restroom stall, my clutch clutched tightly in my lap, the soft buzz of the reception outside, muffled by heavy wooden doors and the rhythm of my own breath. I had spent years becoming the kind of woman who negotiated seven-figure deals, who spoke confidently on stages in front of Fortune 500 executives, who led a team of brilliant minds through late-night product launches and last-minute pivots. But here, I was just Brandon's sister again, invisible, disposable, convenient to ignore, until I chose not to be. I stood slowly, wiped my face with a tissue, reapplied my lipstick with a steadiness I didn't quite feel yet, and stepped out. Julian was waiting just outside the tent, exactly where he said he'd be, his expression unreadable until he saw me and offered a glass of champagne with his signature half-smile. "You okay?" he asked gently. "Not even close," I replied, "but I'm ready." "To go?" "To be seen." As we re-entered the tent, laughter bubbled from the far end where Brandon, Lacey, and Douglas held court at the head table, surrounded by a semicircle of executives and family friends. I scanned the space, absorbing the opulence now with a kind of detachment. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above arrangements of white roses and hydrangeas. The band played an upbeat jazz number that no one was really dancing to, and waiters glided between tables with practiced elegance. We approached the head table, and it wasn't until we were within arm's reach that anyone noticed us. Douglas was mid-sentence, gesturing with a cigar, and boasting about an upcoming expansion when he caught sight of me and blinked, unsure whether to smile or apologize. "Clarissa," he said, "we were just talking about logistics. The system your company provided brilliant stuff. Your team really delivered." I nodded, calm, eyes trained on Brandon. "I'm glad it's working well. You've certainly made full use of our product, even if you forgot to seat its creator." Brandon stood quickly, his chair scraping awkwardly. "We had a mix-up," he began. "It wasn't intentional." "It was intentional," I interrupted. "Let's not insult everyone's intelligence here." I turned toward Douglas. "Your company entered a $30 million contract with Elevate Systems. I'm its founder and CEO. That system you're raving about, I built it from the ground up. And yet today, I was escorted to the kitchen." A silence rippled across the table. Tiffany's hand stiffened around her champagne glass. Lacey raised her chin. "There were priority guests," she said with sugary authority. "It's not personal." "No," I replied, "just deliberate." Julian rested his hand on the small of my back. "This is not how you treat a partner," he said calmly, "especially one you rely on to operate your business." Douglas's brow furrowed. "Brandon, Did you know?" "She's always doing tech stuff," Brandon mumbled. "I didn't realize it was the same company." "That's a lie," I said, without raising my voice. "When Elevate was selected, your VP Eleanor mentioned our connection. She told me she reached out to you directly to verify it." Douglas looked at Brandon, whose silence confirmed the worst. "Well then," Douglas said quietly, "that's surprising." Lacey stood abruptly. "Clarissa, this isn't the time or the place to bring up business drama. You're disrupting our wedding." "No," I said. "You disrupted it when you decided to marginalize me at my own brother's celebration. I'm simply responding in kind." I pulled out my phone, found the contact, and pressed call. "Gregory," I said when our COO picked up, "terminate the Whitmore contract effective immediately. Prepare transition protocols. I'll sign off on everything Monday." "What are you doing?" Brandon hissed, face paling. "You can't just—" "I can," I said, "and I have. My company will not partner with organizations that treat its leadership like an afterthought. Respect is not optional." Lacey stepped forward, eyes wide. "That's absurd. Daddy just finished implementing your system. You're going to ruin everything." "I'm protecting my company," I said, "from people who see me as less than." Douglas stood, shaking his head. "We'll talk about this," he said. "This can't be the final word." "It is for now," I said, "but I'll be happy to discuss a future partnership when I'm treated as an equal." I turned and walked away with Julian beside me, my spine tall and straight, my heartbeat strangely calm. As we passed the last table, I saw my cousin Nora give me a discreet thumbs up. Outside, the air was cooler, fresher. Julian opened the car door for me. "That was one hell of a power move," he said. "I'm proud of you." "I'm not doing it for pride," I said. "I'm doing it because I've been waiting my whole life to be invited to the table, and now I realize I can build my own." As we drove off, my phone began buzzing first from Mom, then from Brandon. I ignored both. When my father's name flashed on the screen, Julian glanced at me. "You going to answer that?" "Let's see what he has to say," I murmured. I picked up. "Clarissa," my father barked, "what the hell have you done?" "Protected my company," I said simply. "From people who don't see me." "You embarrassed the whole family. You blew up a contract that Brandon worked so hard to secure." "That I secured," I corrected. "And I blew up nothing. I made a choice, a business decision." "He's your brother," my father snapped. "Family comes first." "Not when family forgets I'm a person," I replied. "Not when they treat me like I don't exist." He was silent for a beat. Then he said coldly, "You've made your bed." "Then I'll sleep in it," I replied and ended the call. Julian was quiet for a few moments. Then he said, "That was brutal." "No," I replied, "that was necessary." And for the first time in my life, I actually believed it. The morning after the wedding, I woke earlier than usual, though I hadn't truly slept. My body had rested, but my mind hadn't stopped. Every word from the reception, every glance, every echo of my father's voice shouting down the phone rang on repeat like a broken chorus I was finally tired of dancing to. I brewed a pot of coffee, black, strong as always, and stood barefoot by the kitchen window of my condo, watching the city stir below. Julian was still asleep, his hand having found mine sometime in the night like a silent reassurance that I wasn't crazy for finally drawing a line. My inbox had grown overnight. Eleanor Wright had emailed twice. the first message formal and tense, the second sounding almost desperate. She hadn't known, she wrote. Had she been informed of the seating change, she would have intervened. I believed her. Eleanor had always been professional, and I respected her work. But this wasn't about Eleanor, or the operations team. This was about a structure of silence and dismissal that I had been raised inside and that I had finally shattered with one decision. I hadn't planned to answer any calls that morning, but when an unfamiliar number flashed across the screen, no name, no city ID, I paused. Something had told me to pick it up. "Clarissa Monroe," I answered. There was a moment of silence, then a voice I hadn't heard in decades. Low, composed, unmistakably familiar. "Clarissa, it's Diana, your father's sister." My knees almost gave out. Aunt Diana? I hadn't seen her since I was 14, hadn't heard her name spoken in my house without a bitter edge in nearly 20 years. "It's been a long time," she said softly. "I got your number from someone at the wedding. Word travels fast in certain circles, especially when someone dares to challenge the Monroe status quo." I didn't know what to say. "I didn't realize you were still in touch with anyone." "I'm not," she replied, "but I've been watching from a distance, and yesterday I watched you do what I couldn't, what I didn't." The city seemed to slow outside the window. "What do you mean?" "I built an interior design firm in the early 90s, she said. "While working at Monroe Builders every summer from high school through college, your grandfather promised I'd be part of the family legacy, but when I graduated, he handed the company to your father and told me it was a better fit for a man." She paused, and I could hear the old wounds barely hidden behind her steady tone. I left. They wrote me off as emotional, difficult, ungrateful. I was none of those things. I was simply no longer willing to be invisible. I sat down slowly at the kitchen island, the phone pressed to my cheek. I had no idea. "Of course not. Your father erased me from the narrative, same way he tried to erase you yesterday." I closed my eyes. It wasn't just me. This wasn't personal. It was generational. "You're not alone in this," Diana said, "and I wanted you to know I'm proud of you, for walking away, for saying no when they expected you to stay quiet." My throat tightened. "Thank you," I whispered. "Would you have coffee with me sometime this week?" she asked. "I think there's a lot we could talk about, and maybe some things I can help with too." "Yes," I said immediately. "Absolutely." After we hung up, I sat in stillness for a long time. Not the paralyzed kind, the peaceful kind, the kind that follows clarity. At 10 a.m., I took a video call with Eleanor. She looked tired, makeup minimal, clearly frazzled. "Clarissa, I wanted to say again how sorry I am. I've already started working with our legal team to facilitate a smooth termination, but I have to ask off the record, is there any chance you'd reconsider?" "Not under current circumstances," I said honestly. "The damage isn't logistical, it's foundational. But I appreciate your professionalism, and this isn't about your team. You've been excellent throughout." She nodded slowly. "I understand. But just so you know, Douglas was blindsided. He had no idea who you were beyond the CEO we contracted with. And he's furious. At Brandon, at Lacey, even at himself." That surprised me, though maybe it shouldn't have. Eleanor continued, "He's asking for a meeting with you, a chance to reset, new contract, new structure, clean slate." I said I'd consider it, but I wasn't sure. That afternoon, Julian and I sat on the rooftop of a quiet bistro he liked, under a soft canopy of clouds. "What are you thinking?" he asked as I stirred my iced tea. "That I've spent my whole life waiting for my family to acknowledge my value, and now the world is doing it because I finally stopped waiting." "And the Whitmores?" "They can wait," I replied. But that night, a text came through. It was from Brandon. "Can we talk? Just the two of us. Tomorrow. Please." I stared at the screen for a long time, unsure. After everything, I still loved my brother. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. So I replied, "Luciano's, noon. Just us." He was already sitting at the table when I arrived, nervously adjusting his watch. He stood as I approached, unsure whether to hug me or not. I offered my hand instead. It was the first time I'd ever seen him look so small. "Thanks for meeting me," he said. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I wasn't sure either," I admitted. "But here we are." We ordered. He fiddled with his water glass for a while before finally speaking. "I messed up," he said. "I didn't stop her. I didn't fight for you. I didn't even mention your name to Doug until he brought it up. And when I saw where you were seated, I let it happen." I said nothing. Let the silence do the work. "I've spent so long trying to live up to this image of being the one who carries the family name forward," he continued, "that I ignored the fact that you've built something real, something incredible. I was jealous and insecure, and I'm sorry." The words landed like soft rain, gentle, surprising, but not enough to erase the drought. "That doesn't make it okay," I said quietly. "No," he replied, "but it's a start, and I want to do better, not just for you, for me too." I nodded slowly. "Then start by acknowledging what you've always avoided, that I'm not your side character. I never was." "You never were," he said. "You're the main event." And for once, I believed he meant it. The morning sun spilled across my desk at Elevate Systems as I sat reviewing the week's metrics, emails, and an internal summary of new client interest. My conversation with Brandon at Luciano's had left a strange imprint, not closure, but a shift. A door no longer barricaded, just ajar enough to breathe through. Yet, even as he apologized, even as my mother sent a short message the next day saying she was rethinking a lot of things, I knew forgiveness, if it came, wouldn't erase the years I had spent being reduced to a footnote in my own story. It would merely mark a new chapter written by me, not for me. My assistant knocked lightly on the glass wall of my office. "Clarissa," she said, holding a tablet, "Eleanor Wright just requested an urgent in-person meeting. She's downstairs." I blinked. "Now? Now." I stood, smoothed my jacket, and nodded. "Let's not keep her waiting." Eleanor looked both determined and hesitant, her posture crisp but her eyes darting like someone trying to say something carefully rehearsed. We sat in a quiet corner of the office lounge. "I won't waste your time," she began. "Douglas asked me to reach out directly. He's open to a full reset, new contract, new terms, no involvement from Brandon or Lacey. And he's prepared to issue a written apology acknowledging what happened at the wedding was unprofessional." I said nothing for a moment, letting that land. "And what's the catch?" I asked. "No catch, just recognition that Elevate is essential to Whitmore's future operations and that respect is non-negotiable this time." I considered her. There was no desperation in her voice, only resolve. I saw in her a woman who had probably been in boardrooms where she had to smile through dismissals, code switch to be heard, carry twice the burden to earn half the credit. We were not strangers in that experience. "I'll consider it," I said, "but only because of you. If you hadn't carried yourself with such professionalism throughout this mess, we wouldn't be having this conversation." "Thank you," she said, her voice low, "and whatever you decide, I respect it." She stood, shook my hand, and left. That night, on my balcony with Julian, I told him about the offer. He poured 2 glasses of wine and sat beside me. "So, what are you leaning toward?" "That it's not about the contract. It's about how we respond to the moment when we realize we're not invisible anymore, when we've finally forced the world to look and say, 'She built this. She matters.' Then maybe the question isn't whether to take them back," he said, "but whether it serves your mission now, on your terms." I nodded slowly. Exactly. A week later, I stood in front of a classroom of 20 women, most of them first-generation entrepreneurs, many of them balancing day jobs, children, or family expectations that whispered they weren't enough. This was the inaugural cohort, a visible mentorship initiative I had quietly been building for months, inspired by the idea that the hardest visibility to claim is not from the world, but from within. You don't need a wedding or a breakdown or a contract to be visible, I told them. You just need one decision. One moment where you say, "I'm not shrinking anymore." They nodded, some with tears in their eyes. I remembered every one of those feelings, and I knew now that clarity was a kind of power more permanent than money, more impactful than prestige. 2 weeks after our meeting, I called Eleanor. "Let's talk terms," I said, but this time I named them. Douglas eventually signed the new agreement. Higher fees, strict respect clauses, all communications routed through Eleanor. Brandon and Lacey were nowhere near the process. When the press release came out, Whitmore Properties called it a revitalized partnership built on mutual growth. But those of us who had lived it knew the truth. It was a course correction, a reckoning. At the next industry gala, I didn't sit in the back. I sat at the keynote table beside Eleanor and 2 major clients who had found Elevate after reading about the infamous kitchen seat debacle. One of them leaned toward me and whispered, "What you did? It inspired a policy change in our entire firm. We don't let behavior like that slide anymore." I smiled. I wasn't seeking validation anymore, but I wasn't rejecting it either. It felt good to be seen, and more importantly, to have seen myself first. At the end of the gala, as the lights dimmed and the music swelled, Julian found me in the crowd. "You're glowing," he said. "That's what visibility does," I replied. "Once you step into the light, you don't go back to shadows." "So what now?" he asked. "Now," I said, slipping my hand into his, "we keep building, with people who see the whole of me, and with people I'm proud to be seen with." And as we left together, hand in hand, I realized that the table I'd once begged to sit at had never mattered. Because I wasn't just meant to take a seat. I was meant to build the table myself and decide who got to sit beside me.